You know what was a monster? Frampton Comes Alive, 1976. Is there anyone you knew who didn't have that record? I don't think so. Bam! All right, have a...
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Musical Memories. I'm your host, Anthony Gamer, and in today's episode we're going to be discussing Frampton Comes Alive. In my humble opinion, the 70s had to have had some of the best music of any decade, and yes, I even feel that it had better music than the 60s, probably because I wasn't around for that decade. But regardless of the fact, I believe some of the best music came from this decade, which is why a good considerable amount of the songs on most classic rock stations come from this decade, and no other live album from that decade says classic rock like Frampton Comes Alive. One thing that was a staple in the 1970s music scene were the live albums, and there were quite a few of them. However, Frampton Comes Alive probably was the biggest selling of all of them, if not, in my opinion, probably one of the greatest, if not one of the greatest live albums of all time. However, this was not the first great live album that kind of started this subgenre. The album that actually started that would be, this one, Kiss Alive 1. This album was released a year earlier, and besides the fact that it was a big selling album for Kiss, record labels and bands alike said, well, there's something to these live albums. So, as this album was the catalyst, several great live albums by other artists came out during that decade. Other than Frampton Comes Alive, others that come to mind are Foghat Live and Great Gonzos by Ted Nugent, among others. But regardless, we're not here to talk about those live albums. We're here to talk about Frampton Comes Alive. So, let's get to it.
Alright, the album itself was released on January 6, 1976 in the United States, and was released in the United Kingdom on February 13th, 1976. It was a double album, and it clocked in at 78 minutes and 0 seconds. When you listen to the album, it sounds like it was one great big concert, or maybe two or three. However, it was recorded over a series of different concerts. First one was at the Marin County Civic Center in San Rafael, California on June 16, 1975. Winterland Ballroom, San Francisco, California, June 17, 1975. Long Island Arena, Comac, New York, August 24, 1975. And sunny Plattsburgh, New York, on November 22, 1975. Of course, we have to talk about the band themselves, starting with, of course, Peter Frampton, who was lead vocals and lead guitar, and of course his signature talkbox, which he performed on 2 tracks. Bob Mayo played rhythm guitar, piano, Fender Rhodes electric piano, Hammond organ, and background vocals. Stanley Sheldon, bass guitar, background vocals, and John Siamos on drums. Sadly, both Bob Mayo and John Siamos have since passed on. Alright, so let's talk about the tracks themselves. Beginning on side 1, we have Something's Happening, Dubiwa, Show Me the Way, which was the second single released off this album, and one of the tracks in which Frampton plays his signature talkbox guitar. Number 4, It's a Plain Shame. All these tracks were written by Peter Frampton, except Dubiwa, which was written by Peter Frampton, John Hedley Down, Rick Willis, and Tom Johnston. Alright, so let's go on to side 2, which is probably my favorite side of this whole album. All I Want to Be Is By Your Side and Wind of Change. These were 2 acoustic jams, and actually I prefer these acoustic versions of the songs more than I do the studio versions. And of course, Baby I Love Your Way, probably one of Frampton's most well-known songs, and this song was the single off of this album. And I Want to Go to the Sun. All these tracks were written by Peter Frampton. Alright, now we're on to side 3. We have Penny for Your Thoughts, I'll Give You Money, Shine On, which again is another Frampton kind of signature song, although it wasn't a single, and then Jumpin' Jack Flash, which of course was a Rolling Stones song. Although when you hear his version, it's almost like not a reimagine or even a remake. It's almost like he wrote the song is he's really made it his own. So this is definitely a hidden gem off of this album. And finally, we come to side 4. First song is Lines on My Face. Second is Do You Feel Like We Do. This was the third and final single off this album. Now, the album version here is 14 minutes and 15 seconds. Quite a long track, I know. This song was actually written by Peter Frampton, Mick Gallagher, John Simos, and Rick Willis. This was probably, I would say, the song in which you really want to listen to if you want to hear Frampton's amazing guitar playing as well as his talk box. One of the things about this song, though, when it was released as a single, it was pretty much chopped in half. The single version is about 7 minutes long, which is the version you usually hear on the classic rock stations. I'm not really sure why they don't play the full version. You really miss out on a lot if you don't listen to the full album version of the song. But again, it's typical when it comes to radio stations, as they usually don't like to play long songs, even on the classic rock station, which personally I've never understood, but that's just me.
Believe it or not, it wasn't until the 80s that I actually discovered Peter Frampton. Of course, I'd heard him on classic rock stations over the years, as that was pretty much a staple of the radio stations that were played in my parents' house, whether it be at home when the radio was playing or when we were on a car ride somewhere. In the mid-'80s, I was still buying records, as CDs had not quite caught on yet, and my parents pretty much drilled into my head that cassettes were a waste of money because, cassettes would wear out. But of course, it wasn't uncommon for us as a family to make mixtapes or to take our favorite albums and then put them on a cassette tape. I remember when I'd heard about this album, I of course wanted to get it. But as back then as it still is today, I wasn't very good at saving money, and being as this is a double album, of course it costs double what a regular record would cost. So I remember working extra, saving money, picking up extra mowing jobs just so I could save up enough money to buy Frampton Comes Alive. And this is that album that I purchased in the late 80s. Frampton would do a lot of great music afterwards. I will discuss one of my post Frampton Comes Alive albums in a later video. However, it can be said, and I totally agree with this, that this was his peak. This was probably not only his greatest album, but dare I say, one of the best live albums that I have ever heard and probably ever will hear. Well, that brings us to the end of another episode of Musical Memories. I really hope you all enjoyed it. I enjoy, of course, talking about all of my favorite albums. If you did like it, you know what to do. Give me a great big thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget to tell your friends and family about my channel, as if they're big into classic rock, I would like them to check out this channel as well. If you have any suggestions of albums that you believe I should discuss on this channel, let me know about them in the comments section below, and who knows, they may be the subject of a later episode.
In my next episode, I'm going to discuss yet another album that holds a special place in my heart, and one of my all-time favorite childhood albums, that being Paradise Theater by Styx, so you will not want to miss that.
Well, until next time, I am Anthony Gamer, and I will see you all in the next episode. Until then, have yourselves a great day. Goodbye.